Oh wait, I never I never changed the start to different day banner, but have everyone no fear anybody. No fears whatsoever. We're as on brand as always here at the Dynasty After Party. It's myself, Michael Sicoli, joined by Joel Wirth. How you doing today, Joel?
Good. A little depressed about the Packer game, but we'll push on, ever forward.
Listen, you had a very unfortunate loss today. I had a very fortunate win today with the Steelers, who got a let's call it questionable. It's called a questionable spotting of the ball. But I think he reached. I think he totally got there. But either way, we have a great show lined up for you guys today. We're talking about that dynasty landscape for the running back and tight end position. Those two are as interesting as it comes. The running backs are always rotating. The tight ends haven't been rotating at the top, but maybe they are now. We got some young blood in the water. A lot of things that we're going to be talking about today on the show. A couple of trades later, all the good stuff that we're going to always be talking about on the Dynasty After Party. So hang with us, and we'll see you in a second. And just like that, Joel, we're back. It's week 7. We're halfway through the NFL season, and I already feel like I've lost years off my life this season. How are you doing? I know I asked you that in the beginning, but we're talking dynasty running backs and tight ends today, so it just feels like something we gotta push through.
Yeah, I'll tell the story of why I hate fantasy football. One of my leagues where I'm a pretty serious contender. It's a 14-team IDP, really deep league. I have Jahmyr Chase and Garrett Wilson on a bye this week. And like my only option at receiver was Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I said, there's no way I'm starting him. He didn't have a target last week. He's got like 3 catches all year. I'm cutting him. Cut him for Mac Hollins, and MVS has as big an MVS day as you're ever going to see. So yeah,
it's got to hurt even more as a Packers fan as well, knowing
I don't care. I don't care about him in that way. It's just
I get that.
Frustrating.
It was that type of week, as Elixir says right here, finishing his week with 57.7 fantasy points. I feel that pain because, like you, Joel, I also made a late pickup and had to plug in my roster. A lot of RB needy rosters I have out there. The Nick Chubb injuries hurt. The Dave Montgomery injuries hurt. My SFB roster, my Scott Fishbowl roster, ended up starting Damian Williams this week, who, after having a surprisingly solid role last week, got promoted again this week, went out, dominated with 1 carry for 3 yards. So, brutal day for Mike Sicoli in that one. But on the bright side, we do have at least some interesting things to be talking about on today's show. Dynasty running backs, dynasty tight ends. Let's start with running backs. Let's focus on that one first, because I think that is such an interesting question for running backs. Because every year we go into the season expecting it's going to be these guys. We're drafting these guys high. And within a month, we change all of our opinions. Is De'Von Achane a top 5 guy? Is Breece Hall back to the RB1 overall? Is Christian McCaffrey, now that he potentially couldn't miss 1 week, is he now all of a sudden outside the RB1 picture? Like, the overreactions and reactions to dynasty running backs swings so far on both directions. It's always difficult to get a reading on who's where and why they're there to begin with.
And yea, Moses came down from the mount, and upon a tablet was inscribed, "Blessed are the 0 RB truthers, for they were right all along."
I knew you were going to say that, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we kind of went into the season thinking, okay, yeah, running backs are a year-to-year proposition. We didn't go far enough, right? Their running backs are transients. They're a week-to-week proposition. That's it. Like, you cannot just throw a couple guys out there who are going to get some touches and you're good. That's all you need. Like, there's a few guys like Christian McCaffrey, who's kind of insane. Breece Hall's been really good in a terrible offense, but you just can't trust these guys. Like, Bijan got no touches today. I know he was sick, but still,
sick.
Like, this was the guy. This is the guy who was going to be the savior, right? He was going to be the savior and save everybody, and he's just as caught up in this Atlanta offense as Drake London and Kyle Pitts are. So, what are you going to do? Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
De'Von Achane was going to be our savior, and then 2 weeks later,
He got hurt.
2 weeks ago, we were singing his praises unknown. We didn't know at the time that he had a pretty serious knee injury, and now he's on IR. I
And
tweeted that next day,
Dave
like,
Montgomery.
0 RB giveth and 0 RB taketh away. Yeah.
David Montgomery, top 5 running back. We were talking about him all offseason as somebody that we both liked in the later rounds. And then he got hurt. And now Jahmyr Gibbs scored a
Now he's
touchdown.
had 2 separate injuries that have cost him games.
And now prepare for – we had Dave Montgomery, top 5 running back, rest of the way. He has a good 3-year deal. He's going to be there for a while. He is a good dynasty asset. Now he's hurt. Jahmyr Gibbs played, scored. All of a sudden, what's going to happen to Dave Montgomery's value over the next week?
Gibbs did nothing other than, I mean, the whole Detroit offense was terrible today, but I mean, Gibbs didn't do anything to distinguish himself.
Sure. My point is that it's the type of thing that I think people will overreact to for all the reasons we said before. And I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs still had 28 fantasy points today. He had 11 carries for 68 yards and a score, plus 9 catches for 58. It's that type of performance, whether you think it was a good one or not, is the type of numbers that will force people will overreact to David Montgomery.
Yeah, they probably will.
Jahmyr Gibbs apparently stepping up into that role.
Yeah, they may overreact, but this is still David Montgomery's back. This is not a repeatable game script, right? They got buried early. They were down 28-35, nothing. Yeah, so this was a game that, if David Montgomery's in there, this game probably doesn't unfold that way. And there's no way he's going to get that kind of volume in a typical Detroit game. Like this was an aberrant game for them. It was back-to-back road games. We kind of saw this coming. We should have seen this coming. I did bet Baltimore pretty heavily today, so that turned out all right. I think we need, this is still Dave Montgomery's backfield, but the point is, like, nobody coming into the season thought David Montgomery was an elite dynasty asset.
Yeah.
So this is what we've come to. In one league, we'll do a quick trade evaluation. It was a pretty heavy 0 RB build, and it's contending. And I did the unthinkable. I traded a 2nd round pick for Raheem Mostert, right? Because I don't care anymore. I just want the production
outside your comfort zone.
I don't care. I want the production now. I don't care about next year, because let's look at the guys who were taken at the end of the first, early second this year. Zach Charbonnet doing nothing. Like, his most likely case is he turns into Rashad Penny. Tank Bigsby is looking at a long, distinguished career of being a handcuff.
Kendra
Miller, as much as we liked him, has done nothing, and there's no indication that Kamara is going anywhere. There's no indication that Jamal Williams is going anywhere. So he's going to be at best as part of a committee from going forward. So I would rather take that 2nd round pick and get production for however long it lasts. Whether it's a week, he'll probably get hurt tonight now that I traded for him.
Yeah, probably.
But whether it's a week, whether it's 2 weeks, whether it's 3 weeks, just give me that production on a contending team, and I'll do the same thing next year, right? Yeah. I'll go out and find whoever's scoring next year that nobody wants from a dynasty perspective, and I'll trade for him, and we'll go from there.
And the nicest thing about doing exactly that is that you didn't need to pay up before the season. You were able to wait 7 weeks, see, Mostert is doing this. He is popping up. Like, this is the guy that's working. So I'll just buy him for cheap because he's old, as opposed to paying up for a guy before the season and hoping he's going to be what we want him to be. So you were able to get value on doing that. And before we stray too far from the 0 RB mindset, we never do on this show anyway, but I do want to read off a few of the renowned and distinguished Week 7 RB leaders so far with the results we have. So Dante Foreman, the RB1 right now. Gus Edwards, the RB5. Jerome Ford, RB9. Isaiah Pacheco, RB10. Rashad White, 11. Kareem Hunt, who was on a roster a few weeks ago, the RB13. Tyler Algier, the RB15, which nobody saw coming, whatever. Darrell Henderson, again, not on a roster 2 weeks ago, RB16. All these guys are finishing ahead of your favorite running backs, and none of them were worth dirt a month ago, even a week ago, potentially.
Yep.
So that is, I think it's so important to look at dynasty running backs in the middle of the season, because I think this is the perfect time to realize how much investment you are putting in your running backs that you could have went elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the mindset where I'm just not. I don't know that there is a running back that I would pay a first round pick for.
Oh, you'd pay a first for Bijan. Get out of here. Get out of here. Come on.
There's first, sure. But am I going to feel good about it?
No, well, you won't. You won't. The rest of us, me, the rest of us out there, elixirs who might be in the chat, he'll feel good about it.
Obviously, there's a little bit of hyperbole there, right? I would trade a first for Christian McCaffrey. I would trade a first for Bijan. I would trade a first for Breece Hall.
But I get your point.
Once you get south of that elite tier, like Jonathan Taylor, do I want to pay a first for Jonathan Taylor? Why?
I don't know. Saquon Barkley, do you want to pay a first for Saquon Barkley?
Jonathan Taylor's like one of my favorite players in the game. I mean, went to Wisconsin. He's a former Badger. He's,
played great
Hall of Famer in my book. But I don't know that I want to pay a first for him. Outside of that elite handful, maybe.
Would you pay a first for Travis Etienne?
No.
Interesting. Okay, that's interesting because he's one of those younger guys. Assuming he has 2 more years plus a 5th-year option potentially on his contract. So he's doing it all with touchdowns, and that's great. Don't get me wrong, but if the touchdowns go away, like I'm much more inclined to go try and trade for Trevor Lawrence because he looks really bad because Travis Etienne is getting all the touchdowns. That's not sustainable. He's not going to get 20 touchdowns. He's not going to get, he's not going to keep scoring 2 touchdowns every single game. Right.
That's just kind of bolstered his numbers. So I want to go the other way. I want to go trade for Trevor Lawrence. Yeah.
See, and that's always a good way to think about it as well. It's the guy that is performing.
Maybe that's the contrarian in me, but it's just the way I think.
It's statistical regression. It's a good way to think about it. But you mentioned a name before, and I believe he's on our thumbnail, and he's someone we should 100% be talking about, De'Von Achane. We alluded to what his dynasty value is, and then we talked about how crippling it was that he immediately got himself hurt. Not immediately, but got himself hurt last week or a couple weeks ago. And that's the person that I get the most texts about from friends in dynasty leagues of what should I do with De'Von Achane? Should I sell him for this? What's his real ceiling? What can I expect from him? What is De'Von Achane? The rookie phenom he was for a few weeks, and now he's obviously sidelined with a knee injury.
I think he's exactly what we've seen from him, right? He has elite upside, but he's probably, as much as I love him and have loved him and have touted him, he's probably going to struggle to stay healthy. He's probably going to be one of those guys, if you invest heavily in, you're going to end up regretting it because it's going to cost you, it's going to cost you games. It's going to cost you weeks. So yeah, is he a guy I would pay a first round pick for? Not right now. Like if I'm a contender, no, because you're not going to get him for the next 3-4 weeks. So not now, but I mean, he's a guy I'm trying to, on non-contending teams, I'm trying to kind of poach from contending teams who don't have him. And, if I can sell off something I don't want for Achane and a pick, that's kind of what I'm trying to do, but really no one's biting on that. So I think people believe in the upside, which they should, because he's shown it and he's in the perfect offense for his skill set. So, but is he a top 5 dynasty running back? Has to be.
Yeah.
Does that mean anything? Not really.
That was the question. That was the question beforehand. And I'm scrolling right now to try to find a few of these trades that I have been thrown around with this Achane, the hype that did exist before. But in the meantime, we got Faith popping on the chat here, calling out you, Joel, saying, how'd you guys manage to face each other in both Club Fantasy leagues this week, which is something I imagine you must have an answer for.
She's going to win the matchup I wanted to win, and I'm going to win the matchup I didn't want to win. That's how my week is going.
A brutal development. Development. As I search for these Achane trades I was talking about, question coming in from Chaka here. He's down 16, so he does need some upside here. Does he play KJ Osborne? Does he play Jeff Wilson? Is a PPR league? I know this isn't a Dynasty question, but I'm still searching for these trades, so let's go for it.
Yeah, I would go with Osborne. Do we know how much work Jeff Wilson is going to get? That would be my concern. It's like Mostert is killing it. So, coming off, I'm always kind of hesitant to, we talked about Aaron Jones before the show. We were both very high on him this week, and he obviously wasn't ready to get back to a full workload. So that kind of thing always makes me hesitant to jump on guys who are coming back off of a pretty lengthy injury stay.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think I personally think Jordan Addison's going to struggle against those 49ers corners. I really do. I think that the 49ers corners are physical, and I think Jordan Addison still needs to add that part of his game. As much of an Addison fan as I am, but I did find out one of these Achane trades. So I was scrolling all the way back to October 1st, right? Rosier times, De'Von Achane, the monster, rolling up and down the field with fire coming out of his cleats. My friends are texting me trades about, would you trade Achane for Kyle Pitts and Brandon Ayuk? That was his value at the time. It just in some leagues. That was something that my friend was offering. And I said, yes, I would do that if it was Ayuk. Originally, it was Pitts and McLaurin, which was a little bit more difficult for me at the time.
Yeah.
But that's the example, though.
Can you imagine if you had traded Kyle Pitts and Brandon Ayuk to get Achane, and the next week he goes down? Yeah.
That's what happens.
Soul crushing. It does.
Yeah, and listen, some of it is just, it is what it is. People get hurt. Pitts has really turned it around, and we always knew he was going to be a great player, but it wasn't looking like it was going to happen this year. And sometimes it just works out where it's a perfect example of two guys you'd much rather have now. But that's the example of how you could sell high on running back, even the young ones, even the phenoms, even the top 5 type of potential players. Because they're running backs, you could trade them for potential value for more. And then you could send a third for Dante Foreman and get the RB1 on a week.
Exactly.
Or you send a second for Raheem Mostert, who's a RB1 this year.
Or you send a third for Kareem Hunt and fall into 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, there's ways to do that. And as long as you have pieces like Kyle Pitts, like Brandon Ayuk, and like Cooper Kupp and all the other
or you can get Zeke Elliott, who nobody wanted.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted in the preseason.
No.
Nobody wanted. He's the RB1. He's the RB1. He's been better than Ramondre. At least the last couple of weeks.
And that's another example right there. Ramondre, last year, very highly touted in the Dynasty community, very fan favorite type of player. A year later.
Look at the guys who were worth a first round pick, quote unquote, early in the season. Ramondre Stevenson, nothing. Tony Pollard, nothing outside of a couple touchdowns in week 1. Mm-hmm. Why do you want to invest in these guys? Why do you want to invest in these guys?
The turnover is just too crazy. And it's something that, I need to take this lesson myself in some leagues. And it's something that I think we all struggle to do at sometimes because we have the hotness, the hot hand of running backs. But really, it's just a brutal game that you almost always lose. It's gambling in a way. It's more gambling than anything else. You're more likely going to lose than win when it comes to running backs. And when you could cash out and leave that casino at the right time, when that value is high, even if he stays healthy, the process was right.
Exactly.
Because if you were
that's
wrong,
exactly it. Like guys look at what you could have sold the number 1 overall pick for early.
Oh my.
And now you look back and there's no question that you would have taken Stroud and Richardson and probably even Bryce Young ahead of Bijan if you had to do the draft over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Bijan's healthy. He's healthy. He's playing and he's been good, but he's still not worth it.
Yeah.
That's the point is
so difficult.
You have to be like Christian McCaffrey level elite to return that investment. How many Christian McCaffreys are there? I count 1.
Yeah. And then even once upon a time, Christian McCaffrey was not wanted by anybody.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody wanted
Christian McCaffrey. He couldn't stay healthy.
He kept getting hurt.
Yep.
And then he didn't. And then he didn't get hurt. And then eventually, at some point, now he's hurt. Now, eventually he will miss time again because he's a running back. And it's going to swing right back that other way. And each year, a running back builds another year into their legs and their body. that risk goes up and up and up and up. So it's just something to consider. I think we hit on all the points with fancy running.
And real quick, just because I know
please.
we're gonna move on to tight ends, but look at this draft class, this 24 draft class.
Yeah.
Like no one is distinguishing themselves. Like Travion Henderson, who was the Debbie Darling 2 years ago, can't stay on the field. Raheem Sanders, who was Debbie Darling last year, like that entire team has been a disaster. He can't get, Braylon Allen's been okay, but he's not been great. I think he'll have some value just because of how young he is. Like the dude's going to play his entire rookie season at age 20. So I think he's like, no matter how excited we were about Javonte Williams because he came out so young, Braylon Allen's going to be like an entire year younger. But like, if you had to bet right now, what kind of odds would you give that there's no running back taken in the first 50 picks of the NFL draft?
Whew. First 50? I'd probably
it would have to be minus money. There's no running back being taken in the top 50.
It might be like even odds. It could be even odds. Yeah.
If you stretch it out to the top, to say the first 2 rounds.
Yeah. It'll be close.
Maybe.
I mean, you got guys like Bucky Irving that could potentially slide in there, having a good stretch of play right now if he declares. Which
I mean, there's some sleepers, but
it's
Irving, the kind of guy that's some teams going to give second round draft capital to.
I don't know. I don't know. I long gave up on guessing how the NFL is going to evaluate.
I mean, so this is why, and this is what I kind of came to the conclusion that I should be trading for Raheem Mostert, because there's not going to be anything in the draft next year. I mean, everything's going to be a crapshoot. It's going to be hope and a prayer. And, the guys who look like they could end up in spots where they can get volume, but we thought the same thing about Tank Bigsby. And what's he done? He looked terrible. He's like a preseason hero.
We've spent prior shows talking about buying in when you're ready to buy in and not hesitating to do so in leagues that you're prepared to win. And be sure to check out those other shows. Club Fantasy YouTube has all of them under the live section at Club Fantasy FFL. So be sure to check those out. But let's start talking about some tight ends here, because we talked about running backs and how ever-changing it is. The tight end landscape, frankly, it's been pretty stable. You have Travis Kelce on top. You have Mark Andrews most years in that number 2, borderline number 1 spot. You got George Kittle used to be there, but now he's not. And all of a sudden we have this new crop of tight ends coming on in. We had a very strong draft class last year. Sam LaPorta, borderline tight end 1 overall all of a sudden. You have Michael Mayer, who had a breakout game last week, disappointing this week, but the Raiders don't have a quarterback right now. And you got a whole bunch of young guns in the runs. Yeah, Hawkinson, who's obviously been pretty good over the last 2 years. So Dynasty tight ends. I'm going to ask you again. I ask you this once every 2 or 3 shows, but who's your tight end 1?
It's still Kelce.
It's still Kelce. Okay. Just want to make sure.
I mean, even if you're like a non-contender, you can still sell Kelce more than you can sell LaPorta for. This talk of LaPorta being the Dynasty tight end 1 is nonsense. It is utter nonsense. Now, if you want to know my reasoning for this, go back, read my article about Travis Kelce from back in the summer. How elite tight ends, and he is the elitist of the elite, hold their value deep into their 30s. Yes, I know he is older than any skill position player in football by a significant margin. He's a year and a half older than Keenan Allen. But like Tony Gonzalez, Antonio Gates, Shannon Sharp, on and on and on. These guys, these elite tight ends, other than Gronkowski, who went through just a massive history of injuries. Yeah. And there was no way he was going to play deep into his 30s. These other guys, they maintained a significant percentage of their production well into their mid 30s. So this idea that Travis Kelce he's going to walk away. He's not going to walk away. He's going to keep winning. And also this thing with, I know people hate the Taylor Swift thing. This is the best thing for Travis Kelce, right? He's not going to walk away from this. He's not going to walk away from this. He now has, if this lasts, who knows, whatever. He doesn't have like a wife and kids at home that he's going to want to go settle down with. Taylor Swift's going all over the world. This is a real consideration. He's not going to quit because of it. You think the NFL is going to be, okay, Travis Kelce wants to retire. They're going to give up their cash cow. This is bringing in untold numbers of people paying attention to the NFL who wouldn't be otherwise. They're not going to let him retire. I mean, not that they have any say, but they're going to, I don't think he wants to retire. And he said he doesn't want to retire, but
No.
And he missed one game because of injury, and which is like as many as he had in 9 years, but he came right back. He came right back at a high level. So he's not losing anything. He's still like what's the last couple of weeks? He's been just insane.
He put up 12 for 179 and 1 today.
And what did he have, like 12 targets last week or something like that against Denver?
Yeah, I mean, he's had 9. He's had 9 targets or more in all but one game, and that one other game was 8 targets.
He is the safest investment in fantasy. He is the easiest ticket to the playoffs in fantasy, if assuming that you play playoffs. He is he is going to be productive for whatever contending window you want to put on yourself. Any realistic contending window you want to put on yourself, he's going to be productive for that window.
Do you know what?
LaPorta's a really good player, but he can't come close to Kelce.
Yeah, and what makes Kelce so unbelievably special? You look at his schedule and you see a sea of green behind him on the games he's had. It's not that he had good matchups going into it. It's that he went into it and turned them freaking green. He turned those matchups into good matchups for tight ends because of what he did to them. The Chargers this week, one of the toughest matchups on paper for tight ends, had his best game of the season.
Dominated.
He's not done or anywhere close to it. And look at his brother. You know, everything you said before, right now, he doesn't have a wife and kids to go home to right now. He can keep on going. And the other factor that's so important for Travis Kelce in the dynasty landscape of we're trusting him with our top tier capital to keep on going, he still has Patrick Mahomes. His championship window is open every single year. You can't say that about most players where guys are approaching retirement. Do I want to find another team and trophy hop? Do I want to see if this guy can get it done for me? He doesn't have to ask.
Yeah. It's like he is the one guy you have to stop on that team, right? He's the one guy you have to focus on. And if you watch the game today, he was running wide open constantly, just play after play. But every catch he had, it's like, how is he that wide open? But he still does.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous to be writing in the All-Pro person for every single year. Just and Mark Andrews is in the same conference, but he will never beat the All-Pro in the AFC as long as Travis Kelce is playing football. So it's nuts.
It was
but
once.
We just droned on for like 8 minutes about Travis Kelce because we just love to do
Let's
that.
Move on to the next tier.
That's as firm as it comes atop the group. But after that, it really gets questionable. Mark Andrews, I think, I think we'd probably both agree. Is he your tight end too? I would say he's my tight end too, comfortably. And then it kind of jumps off to that range. You have the young bucks of Sam LaPorta. Dalton Kincaid finally showed some life this week, 8 for 75.
Good today.
Yeah, tight end 4 as of right now. Sam LaPorta obviously is having a very good stretch of plays. Evan Ingram has been quietly really productive this season, a little bit older, so probably not in this range, but he's in that consideration. Michael Mayer, Darren Waller showed signs of life after 6 weeks of being absolute garbage. So I'm not going to ask you who's your tight end 3 because it really could be a lot of players, but how do you approach that when you don't have the Kelce or the Andrews of the bunch?
I think the guys I want to talk about are Kittle and Waller because they were kind of the top of that next tier of whatever the tier was after Kelce and Andrews. Waller is putting it together kind of as the offense gets better. I'm not going to make a comment on whether that's because Daniel Jones is not there anymore, but let your eyes see what your eyes see. He looks better with Tyrod Taylor. Just a fact. My big concern is George Kittle because he does not look at any part of this offense at all. If you take away
Kittle this summer,
if you take away those 3 touchdowns he had against Dallas, he's done absolutely nothing this year on a team that's like regularly putting up 30 points.
And I'll tell you why.
Every single week.
Yeah. It's simple. They don't need him. We saw it last year. Ever since they brought Christian McCaffrey into town, they don't need George Kittle to be a receiver. They don't. They'd rather keep Brock Purdy upright and give him one more second in the pocket then run him out and prioritize plays for him. That's the biggest thing. He can still run routes, but he's not the number one look anymore because Kyle Shanahan loves Brandon Ayuk. Deebo Samuel is a perfect fit for what they want to do. Christian McCaffrey is arguably the best all-around weapon in the NFL. They don't need George Kittle to be that. And with each year that he doesn't need to be that now, it's 1 year closer to it's over. And George Kittle is not a Travis Kelce. He is a Rob Gronkowski. He's
closer to Gronkowski.
Bruiser. He has missed time before because he is a physical freak of a man and an excellent football player. But sometimes excellent football players do plays that simply don't get us fantasy points. And that's really
he's a guy who regularly puts himself into physical harm. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a violent player. He's an excellent player. But you're exactly right. I mean, he's an excellent player, but he's better at things that don't score fantasy points than he is. He's very good at things that do score fantasy points, but he's even better at things that don't score fantasy points. And that's the way this offense is using him. He is not. I'll kind of be fascinated to see what happens tomorrow night when they don't have Deebo. If they want to kind of take some load off of McCaffrey with his injury, we'll kind of see how much run he gets. How much is Kittle going to be involved?
That will be
just the Brandon Ayuk show. This
is I'm not going to call it a make or break week because that's just an overused cliche at this point, but
I think it is.
This is something that he needs to show.
I think it's a make or break 2 week stretch because Deebo's not going to be playing for the next 2 weeks. If he's not getting involved without Deebo, then you really got to just cut bait at that point.
We're going to see Juwan Jennings outperform George Kittle this week.
That's just what I was going to say. Is it Juwan Jennings time and Ronnie Bell time, or is Kittle going to get some run?
We don't make the rules. We just somehow play along with it. It's really not fair what's happening in the NFL sometimes. But let's talk about some other names. I mean, I think I'll ask you this last one on Kittle. If you have Kittle on a roster, what are you trying to get for him, or what's the lowest you'd sell for him? Because I don't know if you get a second for him. I don't know if you get a second for him.
Nobody wants him, right?
Nobody wants him. Nobody's buying.
So that's really the problem is you kind of have to hold him because there's no market for him.
Yeah. So then I guess that's your answer. Even if you're in a rebuild, do you sell totally low for a third and maybe change? Or
I'd rather just hold.
Yeah.
I'd rather just hold and try and pick my spots.
It's not like he's providing you fantasy points to ruin your tank right now, honestly. So yeah, I think that's a fair point. But so some other guys out there. Obviously, we talked about LaPorta a little bit there. Let's talk about the two other rookies I want to talk about here. What's it called? Kincaid and Mayer. Two guys that
talk about Musgrave. That's right.
Some of the three rookies, Luke Musgrave as well. Let's talk about Musgrave as well. Each of those rookies have obviously had their spurts of relevance this season, and each of them have a pretty murky receiver room around them. Of the Bills only have Stephon Diggs, so then who the hell knows who's that number two? Luke Musgrave doesn't have any other weapons around him that have established themselves whatsoever. And Michael Mayer is on the Raiders, who have Devontae Adams, but Devontae Adams doesn't want to be there, and it's like a soap opera every single week on Twitter. So, long-term outlook on each of these guys, I think we kind of have a somewhat semblance of what to expect. We're going to have hit-and-miss games the rest of the season. But going into, for those rebuild targets, tight ends are, I like buying tight ends when I'm going into a rebuild, especially the young ones, because I view them as long-term building blocks. That said, which one of these guys has the brightest future right now? Dalton Kincaid being the highest drafted of them.
I'm probably going to have to take the L on Kincaid, who I didn't like at all, but he's becoming more part of the offense. Like Dawson Knox was also part of the offense today, which is kind of baffling. But I didn't watch the entire game, but he looks like he's getting integrated in. Michael Mayer, I think he had a few nice weeks. I don't think this portends any kind of real significant breakout. Musgrave, as much as I like him, he's got a lot to work on, and this offense is just dysfunctional. I'm hoping I wake up tomorrow and see that there's a new coach there, but I think it has to be Kincaid just because of the pedigree and what we're seeing from him right now.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer. I think ultimately you always sided with that draft capital, but LaPorta being a second round pick, I didn't throw LaPorta in there. I said everyone but LaPorta, but yeah,
I think we already talked about LaPorta.
yeah, we did. Yeah, it's we know what Kincaid can be, but it was always going to take time. It typically does with tight ends, and us seeing these rookie year producers is very not. I wouldn't call it an anomaly, but very much a result of the new trend of the NFL of seeing these young guys produce sooner. It used, 5-6 years ago, it was third-year breakout for receivers. Now, you better produce when you walk right in the door, or you better produce by year 2. Year 3, you're done. We don't care. So
you better produce by the end of year 1, or
you're
written off.
People are already done with Quentin Johnston, and neither of us like Quentin Johnston, but people are done with him. He hasn't produced for 3 games without Mike Williams. That's it. People are already done. It's over. It's over for the first round pick, which, again, I don't like him. I'm not going to defend him. We're not going to defend him on the show. But it's that reactionary nowadays. I don't know if you want to blame social media or if you want to just blame the NFL and the way it's trending, but you better produce. And tight ends are starting to pick up that trend of doing it in year 1. So I think we're seeing big changes and potentially longer careers out of these tight ends. If they're going to produce earlier, we got a lot of run for these guys like Dalton Kincaid and onward.
And we got a couple really good ones coming soon. Like Bowers, we should expect to be a stud as soon as he walks on the field. We haven't talked about. Well, I was going to say we haven't talked about Kyle Pitts yet. So yeah, like the TJ Hawkinson too. We haven't even touched on. Obviously it's a short-term thing, but like he's going to get some run without Justin Jefferson in the lineup, which is going to, it's going to elevate his value. Like I just traded a first-round pick for him. I gave a Pat Freiermuth and a first-round pick for him in a team where a contending team that desperately needed a tight end and a full-point tight end premium. That's a team that had Justin Jefferson. I'm like, how am I going to replace him? I'm going to go get a tight end. That's going to take his snaps. So.
Yeah, it's always fun when we talk tight ends on this show because I feel like this was a little bit more hopeful than we normally are. I think normally it's always, oh God, it's the first 2. You get Hawkinson, and then oh my God, I don't care about the rest. But we have some hope in the light in the future. And you mentioned it with all the amazing rookies coming out, and even our young guys expected to grow up into full-fledged Travis Kelce's eventually one day. But let's jump into some do better trade reviews. We always like to end on a few trades. And again, if you guys want to submit them to us on Twitter, we will always bring them up on the show. Right now we're pulling from our own leagues because that's where we're trying to give you the taste of what's going on in the around the league. So be sure you're following Club Fantasy FFL at Club Fantasy FFL. And you can follow myself at Michael_Sicoli and as well Joel here at the Joel Wirth. So a few trades I wanted to bring up here that I saw going down. Aaron Jones or Ramondre Stevenson for a 2025 first, 24 second, and a 24 third non-super flex. This went down this past week. I had very strong feelings about this, but I'm curious on your take as well. It is a contender if you can figure that out as well.
Yeah, but like in a non-super flex, those draft picks are significantly devalued. So I would pretty easily take Jones and Stevenson here. Okay,
interesting, because I pretty firmly take the pick side. Even in the devalued state of Superflex, these are 2 older, like Aaron Jones, 28 years old. Ramondre Stevenson, I don't
24?
know. 24? I know, but I have no idea what the future holds for Ramondre Stevenson.
I agree with that.
And I do feel like in 6 months from now, I'm going to want that 25 first so much more. And if Aaron Jones and Ramondre Stevenson win me a title, you're right. I would rather have the running backs, but I just worry about what Stevenson's going to be able to provide me this year. You talked about it before. Zeke seems to be running ahead of him, and that's saying something because he can't run. So,
we just spent a pretty significant portion of the show talking about how we wouldn't trade
exactly. That's why it's surprised me. Yeah.
You're getting 2 guys who are contributing, so that makes it much more palatable to give up. You're only giving up 1 first. It's 2 years from now, and it's a super flex, which are non-super flex, which you have to understand that significantly devalues the value of that pick. I mean, think about, we're going into the 24 class where we're going to have a ton of quarterbacks, but no running backs. There's going to be there's Brock Bowers, there's Marvin Harrison. Where do you go after that? So in a non-super flex, you've got 2 elite players in this draft coming up. Maybe Caleb Williams if you need a quarterback. But outside of that, what's the value of a top 4, top 5 pick? It's not much. It's a good player. It's not an elite player.
Joel, let me remind you of something.
Or like elite prospect, I should say.
We always change our minds. February rolls around, the combine happens, March happens. None of our free agents go where we want. There are wide open holes for these guys to fill. This guy looks a little bit better than we thought, you say to yourself. And all of a sudden, that second can be traded for a little bit more. And then draft day comes around and you realize, oh, God, I made a mistake. But that window between March and May is prime draft capital ceiling. For that
it is, but remember, there's no 24 first in here. There's a 24 second. There's a 20. The pick is until 25. So, yeah, you're getting 2 producers now for a first that doesn't happen for 2 years. I'm all for that.
AB, I'm assuming this is not Antonio Brown, tossing that trade into here. It's a redraft trade. Alvin Kamara and Nico Collins for Josh Jacobs and Mike Evans. And he's starting to regret it, him giving up the Jacobs and Evans side. Well, I don't think – him giving up the Kamara and Nico side. Yeah, I can understand why you're beginning to, because you just had a couple down weeks, and we were obviously expecting big things from Josh Jacobs against that Chicago front. What are your thoughts? Obviously, it's redraft, so we're changing our mindset a little bit on it, but
yeah, I mean, even switch like Kamara is succeeding in a way.
Yes, see now that's the guy I'm willing to overpay for, or not overpay, because I'm willing to buy into for as a contender.
He's in an offense with Derek Carr as quarterback, and Derek Carr cannot throw the ball more than 10 yards downfield accurately.
Never.
So he is going to get fed targets, and they're going to be playing from behind. And he's just going to keep eating targets. So, yeah, that Kamara could be like, he could miss 3 weeks and be a legitimate league winner if he can stay healthy and his offense keeps going like that. So, yeah, I would, in a redraft, I would be very nervous about this trade. Nico Collins looks really good. In redraft, I would still rather have Mike Evans this year than Nico, but I mean, Kamara looks like a difference maker.
Yeah,
but it's close. Yeah,
and it's crazy.
And Josh Jacobs isn't doing anything close to what he did last year. So yeah, I can see why you're feeling a little twingy about that one.
Nico Collins being the perfect example of somebody that it's okay for the 3rd-year break. Like if you really believe in the guy, hold him. Don't have to go crazy. Sometimes it does take these guys time. But either way, cap for life thrown in. I don't even know what this really means, but. Derek Carr, Saquon Barkley, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua. What a good team. What a good team you got there. He's got Kittle tomorrow night. Not George Kittle, but Kittle. Good luck. Good luck to that. But I feel like you're probably fine after the big weeks that you got.
That's a really good week.
Yeah. He does ask as well, though. And he also picked up Darrell Henderson, he said. Is Musgrave worth a waiver wire? I'm obviously assuming that this is redraft. Hell, man, it's tight end during redraft season.
In Dynasty, he's obviously worth a waiver wire.
Yeah, Dynasty for sure.
If you didn't see the game, he took a nasty helmet-to-helmet hit from the dirtiest player in the game, Kareem Jackson. Kareem Jackson got ejected for the hit.
I assume
Musgrave did not come back, and they said he went off. Said that he was being evaluated for a concussion. Happened in the 4th quarter, so. Didn't get much follow-up, but yeah, there's a chance he may miss a couple games.
Yeah, I believe nobody that has been concussed has returned in the same week this season or possibly any time recently.
Yeah, so I would not expect him to play next week.
Yeah, we just saw Roshan Johnson has now missed 2 weeks of football with a concussion. Yeah. So it's for redraft purposes, you could probably hold on picking him up.
To be clear, we don't know. He was being evaluated for a concussion. Like I said, happened late in the game.
You sure
have much follow-up. Yeah, so you want to check on that. But yeah, if he's in the protocol again, because he's already had one this year, probably will miss a couple of games. So if it's redraft, then you probably want to pass on that.
Yeah, I got one other trade to bring up here. Chris Godwin, Jacoby Myers for Demario Douglas at 24 first, 20 and a pair of fourths that don't really matter. I saw this trade go down in one of my leagues. Again, this was not super flex. I know you would have strong feelings if it was, but without it, I'm curious on your take.
Again, in non-superflex, you're getting 2 startable assets for 1 first, and that's probably going to be devalued. And it's probably, assuming you're making this trade, you're probably a contender. You think you're a contender, and now you're adding 2 pieces. So that 24 first is going to be late, and it's non-superflex, so it's going to be devalued. So yeah, I'm all aboard the Godwin and Myers side.
Yeah, Jacoby Myers feels like one of those best buys for competing right now because he just continues to produce despite.
He's a target hog. He's a target hog in an offense with Devontae Adams.
I have no idea why the Patriots let him go, and he has been really damn good. And I always love, personally, I just love to see undrafted guys really just thrive as much as these guys do, especially in tough circumstances. We see what New England looks like right now without Jacoby Myers. He succeeded there. We have really never seen. It's been a long time since we've seen a receiver work next to Devontae Adams, who commands 1 million targets. Jacoby Myers is working right now. It's really great what he's been able to do. And obviously Chris Godwin is a great player who's dealing with his own struggles with circumstances. But talent-wise, we have no doubts about what Chris Godwin can do, and he's got plenty of years still ahead of him. Regardless, that kind of wraps up the after party here, Joel. We do have one last one from Bryce Ridley. Thoughts on Amari Cooper? He's about to sell ASAP. I'm going to assume this is Dynasty because this is a Dynasty show. Whether it is a Dynasty question or not, I'm going to assume it's Dynasty because that's a good question for Dynasty because Amari Cooper is a weird-ass name. So what are your thoughts on Amari Cooper?
I'm still in hold mode. They're saying like Deshaun Watson came out of the game just basically on a completely precautionary basis.
Nobody does that. Nobody comes out of the game on a completely precautionary basis.
That whole thing is weird. So I guess, but I think Cooper's another guy. Like, everybody spooked on him. So what can you sell him for? You're probably just better off holding. If nobody's going to give you, what his value is or should be. So I get the urge to sell. I just don't know. I think everyone kind of has that same urge. So I don't know if you can sell him for, a value that's better than what then you're better off just holding him at.
Yeah. Would you take a second for Amari Cooper?
No. You'd
rather have Amari Cooper?
Yeah, I'd rather hold.
Would you take,
assuming I'm a contender? Like if I'm not a contender, then I would get out for a second. Sure.
Would you take I'm trying to think because obviously the competing part about it. Let's say you're one of those middling teams that you can kind of go either way on. You're just kind of searching for value. Would you take Amari Cooper for a second and Jaden Reed?
I don't think I would do that deal. Yeah, okay. I don't think I would do that deal from either side. Right?
From either side. Okay.
From either side.
It's a good trade and a fair one.
Yeah, I do. I think that's an excellent price point.
Yeah. All right. So there we go. We found it right there. We did the impossible and found the price point for Amari Cooper, who nobody seems to want anyway. So, yeah, always fun to be talking Dynasty with you, Joel. And that wraps up the Dynasty After Party for Week 7. We'll be back in 2 weeks as usual. We're doing these bi-weekly shows during the season. We'll obviously be changing that up when we have more Dynasty stuff to talk about. It is redraft season after all, but the Dynasty After Party never really changes. How are you doing, Joel? Do you want to give a little send off for yourself?
I'm super depressed.
Okay.
The Packers, they just lost to 2 of the worst teams in the league. Yeah. You lose to bad teams, you're a bad team, and that's really depressing.
See, the Steelers will be a playoff team this year because they had their bye week early, and Mike Tomlin can only coach after the bye. So he's now, I believe, 13-4 and over the last 2 or 3 seasons after the bye. So, yeah, I have no idea how the NFL works nowadays. But either way, this has been the Dynasty After Party. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you guys for dropping in all the questions.
Yeah, thanks for the questions, everyone. And look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we're going to see you guys in a couple of weeks. Be sure to follow Club Fantasy FFL at Club Fantasy FFL on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, all the goodies, all the good stuff out there because of the amazing shows that are with us every single week, every single day, arguably. And you can follow myself at Michael__Sicoli. You can follow Joel here at the Joel Wirth. But that wraps up our show. Remember, I'm blanking.
It's a disco ball.
I remember life fantasy is like a disco ball, keeps on rolling, keeps on spinning year round. So join the club every other week here with Club Fantasy. The Dynasty After Party will take on. So be sure to see you guys in a couple of weeks. Have a good night. Have a good luck with your rest of your